They can go away and write in the forum. They could go into the chat, or do it by Skype or something else. They could go and listen to a related topic on a video. In other examples, they can go away and do some more reading. So you're giving them the option to go away and do some extra things. It's that direction, again, what Dan was talking about. He was giving parents direction. What we're doing is trying to give students that direction. Okay? And what we found when we were using this is that some of them did the vocab anyway, but there was a tendency to go and use this writing, because that's the easy one. To go into the chat room was too complicated to arrange. One way to improve that was to actually pair them up in class. Okay, we've got an activity this week, there's a chat room task, go and do this. And once they'd done it once, they were more inclined to do it again. And actually some people were going into the chat room at other times to talk about other things. But it was necessary to get that feedback to see that actually everyone was going for the writing, because it was easiest to do. They were running away from this because it's hard. So by giving them a pair, by giving them some support, getting them to do it in class, building up the confidence in the tools, and the fact that other people were interested too, they started to use this as well, and started to develop that side of it. The third thing we've used it for, I don't want to go on too much because I think Andre is going to talk more about learning plans, is a little bit on, in the middle of term, getting them to do some self-study, self-reflection, self-awareness of what they've been doing and how they're doing it. Okay? And this all triggered into writing their own action plans. But we got them to just stop and think. For example, we focused on vocabulary. Halfway through the course, were they doing it? I effectively record vocabulary and phrases from class and from other sources and regularly review it. Okay, so we've done this task. Now what? Trying to forget about it? Oh no, I'm supposed to be doing this. I haven't really been doing this. I need to get myself back on track. So by using these choices to get them to think what they were doing, again, it was nudging them, just directing them to think about it. And this was the first stage in getting them to come up with their own action plans, learning plans if you like, and to go forward. The process was a bit more lengthy than that. So that's the areas that we've worked on with the Moodle. As I say, it's not really remote from any of the things that anyone else has said. It's just using this one platform as a key to do it. And a lot of the things, whether it be giving out websites, getting people to go and discuss things outside of class, doing surveys outside of class, you can do without the Moodle. And it just directs and motivates, and then they start doing it without. They start telling each other about things they've read or that kind of stuff. Okay. Any quick questions?
Do you use any of this in the counselling session?
Yes. One of the things that can be quite useful is to use as a carrot rather than a stick. There's systems within the Moodle where you can see how much people have done. As a group, you can see how many people have been posting, how many posts have been made, how often, this kind of thing. And also you can see it by individual student. And actually, when the students realise they haven't done anything and that other people have, they start to think about whether they are, perhaps comes back to what we were saying about an average student or a good student. And a lot of the students we work with, they're intelligent professional adults. If they're not making their progress and they start to realise they're not using some of the tools available, then you can use this to kind of direct them into things they could be doing. The other thing is if they're struggling with something, you can point them into certain activities. Well, if you know, oh, my speaking's not getting any better, or my writing's not getting any better, well, these are some activities you can go and do. So instead of it just being a case of go away and do it, you're giving them again some more direction and more support for them to go away and do these independent things. So, no.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
So, I'd like to tell you about the other thing I've done with my advanced students was learning plans. It's connected with Moodle, but it's not the main point. The main point is getting them into the habit of doing this. And Moodle is just a shell to deliver this. It's not, doesn't do it anything special by itself. So what we've decided to do, and we piloted with one group, and now we're doing it in 3, is the idea of a learning plan, which is quite simple, really. It's trying to, for Learn Autonomy, what I've discovered, it's important to change, kind of transfer roles, change your role a little bit if you want your students to be more independent. And one framework for this we thought would be good was the idea of a learning plan, which doesn't look anything special. It's just a form with student and the class name and the tasks, which students need to commit and write when they're going to do this, and they also need to write a short description of what it is and explain why they chose this task. So at the beginning of each term, when I give the welcome letters to students, I ask them to choose from the 4 skills what they'd like to improve. Reading, writing, listening, speaking, and they can choose 2 or 1, but not more than 2 or 1 to make it more focused. And based on the choices they make for reading, writing, listening and speaking, they choose the tasks they want to do.
Tasks
from the Moodle, from multi-realm, from workbook, and from the classwork. Yeah. They've got many sources to choose from.
Do you use the resource centre as well?
The resource centre too, films and DVDs and books and learning materials. So this is not the only way to choose it from, but there are many elements which cater for different types of learning and objectives. So if you see here, this is one of the extensive listening sites and reading, so they can choose from here, or they can choose from very specific tasks. And the activity you saw with the extension for reading, writing, listening, that was Jenny showed this was one of the formats which kind of caters for this kind of learning. So the most recent one we've done was on Utopia, which was done in class, but because some students missed it, it was in week 1, they could still go online and do this activity, a short video about Utopia, which is connected to the book theme of government and power. And we didn't have to invest much time into this because it's a worksheet just uploaded and put online, so there's nothing extra we did to this material. So they do this task with comprehension questions, which some of them answered on the forum, and here we've got extension tasks, which they put on their learning plan for speaking, for writing, or listening. Okay. And there is reading as well. So they can either watch the full movie about Tom's Moore, or they can do the speaking activity, discuss it during the break or in class, or with someone who knows English in their family. Talk about this, or Skype. Some of them chose on Skype. They took the Skype ID, so they just hooked up and talked about this. Or they could read the full text of the book, Utopia, copyright free, written 500 years ago, and 2 students chose to read the book. One of the options, they put reading with a skill, and one of the options on the 2 students' learning plans was to read Utopia. And they're quite advanced, I must say, that they're really C1, C2 level, most of them in that class. Once they've done their learning plans and assembled from the menu we've got, assembled their own learning path, they uploaded it here, and there are 15 students, 13 have submitted their learning plans, and that grew from initially 6. And what Jenny was saying is very true. We see other students doing things they don't want to be left out, They want to catch up, they want to do things. And we still have 2 students who haven't, and it's their choice. That's new for them. They just transferred from upper intermediate 4, and 2 new students. It's a little bit hard for them to get the concept of I am choosing my own homework and doing it at my own pace. So it's hard. This thing I think is the biggest challenge with this learning plan system, is that it requires dedication and patience. And Tony Hubbard, who's done counselling as part of this project, Tony Hubbard used learning plans to do the counselling, and he said that he found that the students who were stronger and more advanced, they tended to use the learning plans more. The weaker students came and they had 1, 2 things or nothing on the learning plans. So there is a direct correlation to that, to their exposure to this self-guided learning, and to the teacher constantly checking and recommending things to them. Well, in practical terms, how it works, I can meet them in counselling this Saturday, and that's one, Julie Bertrand. And my counselling is based on what they've done, how they felt about it, what was easy, what was difficult. And based on that counselling, I suggested other things they do to work on their weaknesses. That's where really it comes home to them that really that wasn't just a form to fill in. I got some quality feedback from this, and I'm going to improve on the weaknesses. And all students who've had the counselling session last term, all of them submitted learning plans in week 1, because they knew the value of this, really.
For the new students, the first time they come into this class, do you how much guidance do you give them in creating their learning plan and finding stuff on
I let them be first for the first couple of weeks to learn about the options, to learn about how we do things in class. So I don't want to put too much pressure on them, because by being new, they already feel left out, because there's synergy in that group. And also, in the counselling, before the counselling session, week 3, I asked the existing students to pull out their learning plans and just talk about their learning plans to the group. There's just a small group of 3 or 4, and I make sure the new student is in that group, listening to what's happened and how the learning plan works. It's getting there. They're getting there slowly. I don't want to put them under any pressure, because then the game changes. I tell them what to do. So that you've got to be very careful there to balance this. So it doesn't come from you, it comes from the other students. Well, I initiate it all, but it comes from the other students. Yep.
Do you have the computers in class sometimes, the laptops in class at the beginning of terms, so they can see what's available and what's possible?
Yeah, I do talk them through,
Right.
But I tend to use other students for that.
Okay.
The more experienced ones do help the weaker ones. So and there's one task I always make compulsory. There's always one task online which they have to do in order to. I mean, if they don't do that, they tend to not log in. The new ones tend to just forget about it and they think that's an add-on. Not really. It's part of their learning, and it's a different way of doing things. But it's essentially they make a commitment. They choose the resources, concrete resources. Now I'm going to go and borrow a film from the library or from a learning centre. Great. But actually, if you commit and if you write it down and explain why you've done it, the success rate of that was much higher than recommending them a nebulous kind of reference in the learning centre, or giving them concrete examples online, or taking them to a learning centre and showing them and getting them to commit to this. But again, because it's based on their choice of skill they want to practice, we're more likely to do this than not. That's what we've discovered in this group and in the group Tony Hubbard has been working with.
Did you see any difference between your Saturday class and the class in the week?
Massive. Yeah. They're much stronger now than they were a year ago. They do a lot more and study a lot more. The idea of that was because of the Saturday group needed some help during the week. And Jenny started with a blog. I started with this Moodle course, and we decided that that's the direction we want to try going. Seems to be the right direction overall, but there's a lot of things we need to think about when we're trying this system out. And it's a learning curve, we're all learning. So if you want to learn more about this, I'm happy to talk to you about this later.